All right. All right. We are live. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome, everyone, from wherever you're tuning in. This is our special holiday edition of the Create, Engage, Succeed show. I am your co host, Mary Nunley, along with my sidekick and co host,
Amadeus Nunley.
all right. And we would like to introduce you to today's guest, Libby Adams. And I'm going to let Libby introduce herself. But Libby and I met back in September at a virtual 3-day event. We hit it off. She is just one of the most dynamic women that I have met in a long time. And she has some great insights for us. Right now, she is in beautiful Mexico City, enjoying the fresh air and sunshine. And without further ado, I'm going to let Libby introduce herself and then we're going to dive into our topic today. So, Libby, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. And it's good to see you, Amadeus. Yeah, so we met back in September. I just want to say something about Mary. In this event that we were at together, Mary really made herself known. Not intending to, but just because she was taking notes of what was being said, and then she would put them in the chat, and people so appreciated. Like maybe it was seem like a small thing to Mary, but it was a big deal, and people really, really appreciated that. And like she has like fingers like the wind, and so I just wanted to say that about you, Mary. And you may not have even remembered that, but that
Oh,
was
wow. Well, thank you.
awesome. Yeah. And it was so great to meet you back then. And it seems so long ago, like this day, December 23rd was so far away, but here we are. So happy
Yes.
holidays, everyone. I am Libby Adams, PhD, and I founded the International Academy of Self-Knowledge 26 years ago. Um,
Wow.
the topic is, who am I? Why am I here on this earth? And how do I break through the barriers that are preventing me from actualizing my destiny? So, one of the things that I am proud about is having taught in the public schools in California for 9 years. But then I realized, you know what? I'm not making the difference in people and the kids that I wanted to, that I thought I would when I went into teaching. I was just kind of babysitting 36 groups 6 times a day of
Wow.
kids learning Spanish. And so then I shifted through, some various things happening. That's a long story, so I won't go into it. But here I am 26 years later, actually making the difference that I want to make.
That is amazing. And it's interesting that you say 26 years because Amadeus was founded 26 years ago as well. So it's an interesting.
Okay. That was the most auspicious year.
It was indeed. It was indeed. Well, and I have had the opportunity to take one of your courses or part of your course, and it was really fascinating. And again, when Libby and I met in September, the expectation was I would be back in touch with her to talk about my experience with her course and to explore a little bit further. And then life happens. And then the next thing you know, like she said, it seemed like September was just, so far away. And it's like, no, it was just yesterday. So how did you come up with the idea of these courses? And I know one of the things I wanted to talk about was decision making as well, because I made the decision to start your course, and then I allowed a decision to be made for me not to finish everything as I got caught up in just the day to day of life. So, can you tell us a little bit about that and how you help people in their everyday life?
Yes. The decision making process is the most vital one that we have, because we come to forks in the road, right? And we're going to go this way or this way. If we go the wrong way at that fork, we're going to pay, whether we're paying in money or paying painful relationships or health crises. That's going to happen. So it's very important when we come to the fork to go the proper way. Now, how do we know which way to do that? It all has to do with who's making the decision. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a circular path to come back to the fork in the road to answer the question, who's making the decision? Okay.
Okay.
Because I've been teaching Amadeus and Mary. I've been teaching the same stuff for 26 years. And I never get tired of talking about it.
That is fantastic.
I can't tell you how many times I have told you the thing that I'm about to tell you. But the reason I like it is because a lot of people haven't heard it, and their experience of it is like, wow, that explains a lot, right? So here we go. So most people think when they use the word I, that there's just one I, right? Well, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, but there's not just one I. There are three possibilities of an I. The first I possibility would be what Wayne Dyer has said, and this is one of my favorite books by Wayne Dyer. I love Wayne Dyer. Let's get a little picture of Wayne there. Let's see. Wayne.
Yeah. All right.
This is called There is a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. Okay? So if there's a spiritual solution to every problem, then, well, that opens the door for a spiritual discussion. So the first version of I is what Wayne says, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. It's like spiritual beings, that, you know. In my webinar, which I'm actually giving away, there's this awesome picture. It might sound weird to say awesome because it's a person dying, but the picture is awesome. But it's just it's like not a cartoon, but it's a drawing, right? So there's a girl in a bed, and then there's another picture of the girl rising up out of her body, right? So the body's in the bed, but then here she is rising out of the body. That's the spiritual self, right? So the spiritual self is everybody, and you guys have heard these stories about the near-death experiences, right? Somebody says, I was floating up in the corner and I could see my body down on the table and they were trying to resuscitate me, but I felt so free and happy. And next thing I knew, I was back in my body and in pain and all of this, right? So the question is, so it's like, if this is the body that they're trying to resuscitate, well, who's this, right? Who is this? And like a little foreshadowing, it is going to make sense that we would want this one to be making our decisions, right? So this is I number one, what people will call my spirit, my soul, my higher self, this invisible energy, essence, that when it leaves your body, it doesn't come back for 20 minutes or a while, people call you dead, right? So that's I number one. We're going to have a hypothesis. We're going to have a multiple choice question. Sorry. Multiple choice answer to the question, who am I? Okay. Number one, I'm the spiritual being. I number two, well, when we come into this body, we have equipment. We're issued equipment. Like when somebody goes into the military, they give you a uniform and a hat and boots and all that. You get equipment, right? So when we come into our body, well, the body's our equipment. And our body has, this won't be a surprise, a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, right? The conscious mind is the intellectual decision maker, has free will. This is another I call it the chooser. I'll do this or I won't do that, right? It could be that. And we use intellectual, mental, logical, the Ben Franklin scale ways of making decisions that can't see anything beyond that. So that's another place that we can make a decision from, right?
Okay.
And then there's the third version. This is what I call, so this spiritual self we'll call the big I. And then what's the opposite of the big I? The little I. The little I. Then we have these little eyes. And the little eyes, they live in, they're not the subconscious mind, but they live in the subconscious mind. They're stored in the subconscious mind. Like if I said, Amadeus, what's your zip code where you live? What would you say?
37075.
Well, where was that information stored 5 seconds before I asked? People say, oh, in the back of my head. It's like, there's no back of my, here's the back of my head, in the subconscious mind. Mary, if I said to you, what color are the towels in your bathroom? What would you say?
Black and gray, maybe?
All right. Stored in the subconscious mind. So subconscious mind is like a big storage container, right? It does not make decisions. It is, okay. So Your conscious mind is the captain of the ship, and the subconscious mind is the crew. It carries out the orders unquestioned because it doesn't have any logic,
Okay.
right? You know, and so these little eyes are created when we say something that's not true. So here's truth. And then, you know, somebody says, oh, Mary, you're not very smart or something. And then you go, oh, I'm not very smart. But that's not, you know, it's, or you're not, forget smart. Let's say worthy, right? Oh, you don't deserve that. You don't deserve that. And you're like, yeah, I don't deserve that. And if as a spiritual being, I deserve everything, right?
Uh-huh.
But if I agree and they say you don't deserve it, and I'm like, oh, I don't deserve it, then now literally a part of my spiritual energy lowers in consciousness, and now I have this part, and the part's going, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. Well, that programming is the self-fulfilling prophecy, and things are going to happen out in my environment. I'm going to attract things that bring me that validate that I'm not worthy, right?
Okay.
And then I'll make decisions based on like, oh, I don't deserve that. No, I can't raise my prices because I don't deserve that, blah, 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 blah. So we got the big eye, we got the conscious mind, and then we have these little eyes. So those are our three players in the answer to the question, who am I? So I'm going to stop for a second because I know that was a lot, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fascinating. Amadeus, did you have any questions?
Not at the moment.
So before
when you're talking about that spiritual eye, is that also sort of your intuition then? Or is that okay?
Yes, Mary. So let me give you.
When somebody says, oh, I have a gut feeling that I should make this decision, and you can't back it up with logic or rationale, that's more your spirit eye saying, I'm feeding you information, you may not be aware of it, but there's something going on that you need to use.
Yes. Let me give you a perfect example of that, Mary. And you guys have had examples too. So it was 1980. I still remember the year. In 1980, my ex-husband had played in the NBA, and he was coaching basketball at UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso. And I was coming home from a game. We were driving separately, and we lived in El Paso. There's this place called the Valley, and it was really dark out there. You know, there weren't very many street lights or whatever. I come to this four-way stop, and I'm ready to go. You know, I look both ways like we all do, and I'm ready to go. And I hear this voice that says, look again. I'm like, and so I look to the left. This car comes from seemingly out of nowhere, blows through the four-way stop, and would have T-boned me in that intersection going like 50, 60 miles an hour, right? And so I could have said, when I heard the voice, I hear this voice, it's like, that's what you're saying. It's like, where did that come from? I don't know. Intuition, spiritual, God, infinite intelligence, whatever. All I know is it wasn't my idea. My idea was to look and then go, which is what, you know, I did. But this was beyond that, right?
Right.
And so that's the example of what you're talking about. That was my intuition. It's like, so if you think of, that was my inner voice. Mm-hmm. So like if you guys were my passengers and I go, Mary and Amadeus, did you guys hear that? You would say,
hear what?
Hear no idea what you're talking about.
Right? It wasn't on the radio. It wasn't floating around the car.
Mm-hmm.
It was inside me. And it came from this higher level. So we have a conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind, and this spiritual self I was talking about is the super conscious mind, which is connected to some kind of infinite mind. Okay.
Okay.
Now, on the flip side of it, now, well, first of all, you guys have heard your little voice, right? Everybody's got the, oh, my little voice said. You have those experiences, right?
Definitely.
And sometimes we follow the little voice, and sometimes we don't. That's the point I started to make that we're going to get back to, okay? Because in 1978, I was in a parking garage in Laguna Beach, California, and my little boy and my boyfriend was going into his apartment. At the time, boyfriend. And I was following him in, and I said, you should break up with this guy. The little voice is like, you should break up with this guy. And I did not. And it did not go well. I'll spare you the details, but it was not the right thing for me. And I paid for that.
Yeah, and I think we all have examples of that where it's just like, because the conscious voice is the one that's like, oh, but he makes good money, or it's a good school, or that job pays well. And then it's just like, yeah, but I'm going to be miserable. You know, my intuition is saying you're going to be miserable. And I'm like, yeah, but it pays a lot of money. And so I'm going to take that client or take that job or do something.
Exactly. Or worse than that, but he's so handsome.
Yes. Or she's so gorgeous, or, you know, whatever. And it's just like, yeah, but that's not everything. So yeah, you're right. When we don't listen, and, you know, there are countless stories of people that have, like, you know, not gone on airplanes or something because there was something that told them don't do it. And, you know, maybe 90% of the time nothing happens, but that 10% where they're like, I'm not going to get on the plane, and then something horrible happened, they're just like, I don't know what caused me to not get on the plane, but I just said, I'm not getting on there.
Exactly. So now we want to be able to label it and say, I do know what caused me, because we want to be aware of it and deliberately start to tune into it. We want to know that there is this otherworldly sounds weird. There's this higher level of consciousness voice that knows more than my conscious mind does. Right? Like you said, you can't consciously, you know, figure it out, or you don't know, but there's a higher knowing. Right? There's a higher knowing that also is within me. That's another point, right? Where is that knowing? Well, the source may be from the universal mind, but it's also within myself, because my spiritual self is within me and around me and all over the place. So here we come back to where we started with who's making the decision, right? So now it's clear. Well, the conscious mind could make a logical decision. But how about the people, you know, everybody has heard stories on 9/11 about how many people were not there that day that normally would have been there.
Right.
You know, so-and-so just had the strongest urge to stop off for a blueberry muffin and wasn't there at 9:01 or whatever time that was, right? So who's making the decision? Well, I won't say. You guys tell me. So who's supposed to make the decision so we'll get the very best result?
I'd say probably the higher self.
Thank you. And that would be smart of you to say, Amadeus.
Go to the head of the class, you get an A.
Gold star. But isn't that an interesting idea that there are three selves, and the first one, the spiritual self, is and there we go back with Wayne Dyer, there's a spiritual solution to every problem, right? When we don't want to use the logic to override it. Because like we were saying, how many people have said, why didn't I just listen to my little voice?
Right.
More often than not, they're saying that, as opposed to, I'm so glad I listened to my little voice. Because being Mary, did you teach school?
I did.
I thought that you did, right? So you and I know we did not teach that in school. We didn't teach people how to listen to their little voice. Now, did we?
No.
It was not part of the curriculum. What did you teach?
I actually taught at the community college level. So I taught food and beverage, and I homeschooled both of my children and taught at a homeschool co-op, and I taught history.
Okay. Right? And in none of that curriculum was, you have a little voice and let's teach you how to tune into that.
Exactly.
And how to.
It was all very much the logical conscious. It's like, okay, look at your numbers and then do your P&L and then figure out how to do this. But nobody said, listen to that gut that says, well, but I know. And it's funny, though, that you bring that up, because I was a restaurant operations manager for many years, and I would do my annual forecast And then I would send it off to accounting and they would change all the numbers. And then I would keep my original under my blotter. And when I would get in trouble for not doing the numbers that they said I had to do mathematically, I would pull mine out and say, but I hit exactly what I said I was going to do. But I couldn't explain how I came up with those numbers other than that gut feeling of, well, I've been in this restaurant for 2 years now, and this is what we normally do, and here's what's going on in the world, and here's what we're going to do. And they were just like, but we said you had to do this. And I'm like, yeah, but I said I couldn't. I can't make people appear out of nowhere if they don't exist.
You have to work on that, Mary.
You know, we've kind of enjoyed the disappearing this year, not of people dying, but just being able to disappear into our own world.
Right. I'm usually in my own world. I do all my work remote. I was doing remote before remote was even a word, because I have people in Thailand and China. You know what? Speaking to my students in China, in January, they were telling, one was in Shanghai and the other was in Beijing, and they were telling me, oh yeah, we're in, when I'm home from work because they're locking us down. And I thought that was like their problem, right? Uh-huh. Never in years did I think that was gonna be, my story a few months later. In fact, one of the guys from one of those cities sent me masks when we needed masks in March. He sent over a box of 100 masks from China. But anyway, wow. I digress. We were talking about remote.
No, but I mean, it is, and it's kind of interesting because when this all, the whole before lockdown started, again, I think it was more of my intuition or my gut or that higher self, because you can ask Amadeus, he was going to Chicago for training. And prior to that, I called a little family meeting saying, we need to do this, we need to do this, something wicked this way comes. And he was able to get to the training and get out just before everything shut down.
Yes, like that. And you know what? So I'm in Mexico, and my son was concerned about, me coming down, because it sounded kind of crazy on November 16th that I would like take a trip to Mexico. And he said, are you sure it's not too late to change your mind? And I said, no, I meditated about it, and it's the right thing. Literally, Universal Mind sent me here on November 16th. And that was before things really, really got even, like, as bad as things are, it got even worse. And now it's, it's sunny down here. It's safer for me down here. And I'm cocooned now in this place where it's better for me to be in this place. And I look now and I'm like, wow, I'm glad I listened to my little voice, because here I am tucked away in Mexico.
Really. That's awesome. Well, Amadeus is letting me know that we are at our 5-minute mark. So what are some last pieces of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience? And then tell us about your gift that you're giving to everyone.
I think that I've made my point about listening to the little voice, right? So then it starts to get into, well, how am I supposed to do that, right? I just got done saying, well, there's no training, and Mary and I didn't teach you how to do that in school, sorry. But in my free gift, it's a 5-segment, right? And in the first one, there's an ebook that I haven't really touched on, but it talks about it's called The Positive Purpose of Negative Emotions. So negative emotions are another way of letting us know, like subconsciously letting us know that something's wrong and that we should pay attention to it. So in that ebook, it lets you know, what message are these negative emotions giving me? Sure, and there are only two. Either my thought is incorrect and I need to change it, or I need to take correct action. The second segment is a masterclass that gives the long version of these 3 versions of I and everything that I was talking about, with some closed eye experiential meditation of going to that place where you can contact the inner self experientially. And then there is a video that comes from my 28-day class on the 6th sense. And the 6th sense is the inner vision, the inner hearing where I heard that voice, the gut feeling, where you had that feeling, and you tell Amadeus, why don't you better do that. So that video explains, it's like, what is this going on in this other dimension? And then the 4th is an inventory of the true self, the spiritual self versus the little eyes. And it's got like 87 questions where you can see, where are you in those categories? And the last one is a one-on-one session with one of my spiritual health educators.
Wow.
Where we literally find one of your little eyes and then enable you to work through that with the coach. I've trained coaches for years and I mentor them to this day. So they have volunteered their time for your holiday gift.
As I said, that is an amazing gift. I have read the book, and it is, Libby's words don't do it justice. So even if you just do step one of her holiday gift to us, get the book, read the book. I think you're going to see just some dramatic differences from there. But I would encourage everyone, if you've got some, a little bit of slow time, and a lot of us sort of slow down in the next week or so, take advantage of this gift. See what a difference it's going to make in your life. And again, I'm speaking now from my own experience because I've also watched some of the courses. I just haven't gone to the inventory and the one-on-one session yet, which one of these days, yes, that's a decision. But it is very powerful. I think that you will find it, I don't know if life-changing is it when you first read the book, but I think it's going to open up some windows to the way you think and go, oh, I didn't realize this is what was happening. So with that, Libby, thank you so much for joining us this morning. This has been fascinating. And like I said, we will be getting comments from folks through the next several days. Typically, I will make sure to tag you in any questions in case you miss them. And have a very happy holiday season. Stay safe, stay healthy. This is Mary and
Amadeus.
Signing off from this week's episode from Create, Engage, Succeed. Libby, why don't you wrap us up and say bye to everyone?
Bye, everybody. I'm so grateful to the two of you for giving me this opportunity to talk about my favorite topic.
We love it. All right. Thanks, everyone. I am going to stop the live now.